In today's show, I'll be breaking down the latest Bitcoin technical analysis as we do here each and every day. Also breaking news, Mr. 100 strikes again, snapping up another 500 biddies. That's right. Wild. Also, Max Kaiser announces he's going to be working full-time, bringing a major Hollywood studio to El Salvador. What do you think should be the name of this studio? I say Bitcoin Studio. Let's go. We'll also be discussing Grayscale spot Bitcoin ETF halves before the Bitcoin halving. That's right. And we do have a Bitcoin halving occurring within the next potentially 48 hours. Also, crypto market underestimates the long-term impact of the Bitcoin halving. I'll be breaking this down for you, as well as macro guru Alden says Bitcoin hitting six figures wouldn't be surprising amid this rising liquidity. I'll be breaking down her timeline. And speaking of $100,000 biddy, investor Nick Carter also sees Bitcoin undeniably soaring to 100,000 per coin and says the debt crisis will drive people the BTC. We're also going to be discussing Bitcoin will reach over $1 million, no doubt, according to Animoca founder at the WebSummit in Rio. I'll be breaking this down for you. We'll also be taking a look at the overall crypto market. All this, plus so much more, fam, in today's show. If you're new to the channel, important, subscribe. Help support the movement, the #1 daily Bitcoin pod. It's much appreciated. Also, be sure to smash that thumbs up. It helps out tremendously with the YouTube algo. This is pod episode number 1612. I'm your fearless host, JV, and today is April 17th, 2024. Bitcoin reacted. The Fed Chairman Jay Powell's speech and didn't react so well. We're down 2,500 on the day. Will 60,000 hold as support? We shall soon see. And let's kick it off with our market watch as we do each and every day. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Checking out Coin 360. Let's see. Yeah, the entire crypto market bleeding. Bitcoin down, trading just at 60,500. We have Ether under 3,000, Solana at 129 bucks, and XRP back down to 48 cents. And checking out cryptomarketcap.com, we're sitting on a 2.21 trillion market cap with 90 billion of volume for the past 24 hours. Bitcoin dominance 53.9%, with the Ether dominance 60% even. And checking out the top 100 crypto gainers for the past 24 hours, we got BitGet token up 10%, SU up 6.4%, and Say up 3.4%. Below that, very modest gains as the majority of the market is correcting and in the red. Now, which altcoins, family, are you guys most bullish on and believe in the most for this particular bull? Holla. And checking out the crypto bubbles to get more of a visual perspective on the daily. Safe to say 95% of the overall market correcting and in the red as the bloodshed continues. And looking on the monthly, even more bloodshed, substantial corrections across the board. And checking out the Crypto Greed and Fear Index, we're currently rated a 67, which is in greed. Yesterday, 65. Last week, a 78. And last month, a 77 in extreme greed. Now, this one gets me pretty excited to look at. Bitcoin having countdown 2 days and 3 hours. That means it's going to happen at this current time, April 19th, which would be this Friday at roughly, it was at 8:30 p.m.-ish, around that time. And it's going to occur at block height, 840,000. We're currently on block height, 839,656, meaning we're less than roughly 350 blocks away from the most significant event, which occurs in the crypto sphere only every 4 years. Where do you think the Bitcoin price will likely be within the next couple of days at around the time of the halving? Holla, let me know. And you can see here the current Bitcoin market cap is sitting at 1.19 trillion, and you can currently trade $1 for 1,654 Satoshis. Let's freaking go. Anyways, fam, let's move it. We have a lot to cover, so let's discuss a little Bitcoin TA, shall we? Headline reads, Bitcoin bids stack above 60 Gs as hopes of a Bitcoin price rebound build. That's right. Bitcoin traders are demanding the Bitcoin price upside as liquidity sets up fresh battles for the bulls. Bitcoin has liquidated a considerable chunk along this week, clearly, with a snap retracement flushing hundreds of millions of dollars in positions. Now, the bulls have yet to redress the balance. However, with Bitcoin stuck at currently 60,000, we are still threatening a fresh breakdown. So that's the current line in the sand family. The latest order book data shows the bids are currently attempting to get filled just below the spot price. Quoting Keith Allen, the co-founder of Material Indicators, he shares what we want to see ultimately before we get a move that can have a better chance of breaking through this up here is more bid liquidity, something more akin to what we have seen historically. And according to CoinGlass, the largest concentrations of bids, which have appeared in the 24 hours of time from here, sit at 61.2, 62.2, and 62.8. And again, we're already in that 60,000 range. So we're currently below all those bids. Now, trader sentiment is captured by a return to negative funding rates for the first time since October of 2023 in a sea of change from the recent weeks, especially the period around the March all-time highs. Funding is now back to circling bearish sentiment, which the shorts are paying the longs. Quoting Dan Crypto Trades, looking at the funding rate heat map from the past 6 months, you can see how March was generally very overheated compared to the rest. This is normal when the prices are trading near all-time highs, but also a result of the occasional flush of leverage. We just had such a flush. Now, Decent Trader shared funding rates are back positive again, but it was a sign that derivative trading exuberance is calming down, in which they concluded. Now, quoting Invest Answers, breaking Mr. 100 strikes again, just snapped up 500 more biddies in the last 7 days, grabbed a whopping 2,032 Bitcoin. Last month, 8,000 Bitcoin. While others panic, Mr. 100 doubles down. The deeper the dip, the bigger the buy. That's the smart money. Now, there's a lot of speculation right now that Mr. 100 is an undisclosed nation state. According to Max Kaiser, his top contender is, which he just recently mentioned, is Abu Dhabi. Could it be Abu Dhabi, right? In the UAE. Previously, he thought it could have been Qatar. So I want to know your thoughts. Who do you think Mr. 100 is that's gobbling up all these Bitcoin? Do you think it could be Abu Dhabi, Qatar, or could it even be an individual such as a Jeff Bezos who's worth hundreds of billions of dollars? Let me know, because they currently continue to stack like there's no tomorrow. Shout out to Peter. I appreciate you joining the HODL gang, supporting the channel. Respect. Now, big news from Max. He wrote, I left Volcano Energy, a company I founded and served as the chairman, to work full-time bringing a major Hollywood studio to El Salvador. A 200-acre site has been identified. We'll be working with Volcano Energy to incorporate a Bitcoin mining component into the project. What should we call El Salvador's movie industry? He asked Salvi would. Now, I'm not a fan of Salvi would. I think Bitcoin Studio or something with Bitcoin in it would be pretty lit. But I want to know your thoughts. I think that's pretty cool. Respect to Max. Now, also, Plan B, creator of the Bitcoin stock to flow model, recently tweeted, in my opinion, this Bitcoin halving will be no different. All Bitcoin price increase will again be around the halving. Buying 6 months before the halving and selling 18 months after the halving in the green line will outperform buying and holding. Bitcoin greater than 100,000 this year in 2024, and a Bitcoin top greater than 300,000 per coin in 2025. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that sentiment from Plan B. Also, an update regarding the Hong Kong ETFs. Eric Balchunas wrote, mainland China investors probably won't be eligible to buy the Hong Kong listed spot Bitcoin and Ether ETFs, as they are barred from buying virtual assets. These are some of the other routes they could try, but they less used channels and could get shut down. So good to note. So he's ultimately saying we're not going to anticipate as much volume out of Hong Kong with their ETFs, even though they have officially been approved. And I hear they are going to launch at the end of this month, which is in the next couple of weeks. But the volume is going to be way lower because the people in the mainland are not qualified to invest into it. So there you have it. But let's dive into our next story of the day, the latest with Grayscale. The headline reads, Grayscale spot Bitcoin ETF halves before the Bitcoin halving? That's right. Check it. Major Bitcoin investor Grayscale Investments seeing its spot ETF holdings drop 50% of the anticipated Bitcoin halving event. Now, I'm not shocked with a 1.5% interest rate in order to invest into their fund annually. And I think that's why so much of the biddies personally left their stash of almost 620,000 pre-ETF. And now they're all the way down to 310,000-ish Bitcoin on their 66th day of trading, down 50% of the amount since the trading debut, which is wild. So that means the amount is currently worth $19.7 billion. So the GBTC halving came just 2 days before the much anticipated Bitcoin halving, which will reduce the mining reward by 50% from 6.25 Bitcoin to 3.125. So ultimately, there's currently 900 Bitcoin being rewarded to miners per day. That gets chopped in half in 2 days to 450. Can you say supply shock? And occurring once every 4 years, as we know, or once in every 210,000 blocks, the Bitcoin halving is a major event, often tied to subsequent rallies in the market. The two events do not correlate, but make for another coincidence in the chronology of the Bitcoin related occurrences. And here on the chart, you can see the first halving, second halving, third halving, and an estimate for the fourth halving as we continue trending towards $100,000. You can see something in common with each of the three previous halvings is proceeding the halving. We go parabolic, reaching new all-time highs. I expect nothing different for this particular halving cycle. Now, GBTC has been experiencing a massive sell-off since the first day of trading, significantly impacting the BTC price action. The outflows have been largely attributed to the high trading fees, as I referenced earlier, 1.5%. Now, the majority of the Bitcoin ETFs were lowering their fees to increase competitiveness, which we call the game theory, setting trading commissions between 0.2 and 0.4%. Now, you do the math. If you had the ability to invest in an ETF for whatever reason you chose to do so, would you rather pay a 1.5% annual fee or a 0.2% fee? Like, no brainer, right? And I think that's why there's so much ETF outflows leaving GBTC. Now, their biggest rival, BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, which is IBIT, offered only a 0.25% fee at the trading start, not including a 0.12% discount for the first $5 billion of traded assets during that waiver period. BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF attracted a lot of inflows and is currently surging more than 10,000% from just 2,600 Bitcoin on the trading debut to now holding over 272,000 Bitcoin as of April 16th. The BlackRock IBIT is now 13% far from reaching GBTC holdings. So it won't be long before there is a flippening and BlackRock is the largest hodler of Bitcoin. And despite the rapid growth, IBIT failed to absorb the GBTC outflows of 309,000 biddies. However, the 8 other issuers of the spot Bitcoin ETF providers accumulated around 224,000 Bitcoin, excluding GBTC, since the trading launched. So as of yesterday, April 16th, the 10 spot Bitcoin ETFs have collectively held around 862,000 Bitcoin, worth $54.7 billion. Now, what's shocking and mind-boggling to me is it only took them 90 days to acquire roughly 900,000 Bitcoin. Now, for some perspective, it took MicroStrategy 4 years. They were the first publicly traded company to put the biddies on the balance sheet. It took them 4 years to acquire 200,000 Bitcoin. The ETFs just acquired, again, almost 900,000 Bitcoin in 90 days. And I don't think they're slowing down anytime soon. Anyways, fam, let's continue with our next story of the day and dive a little deeper into the Bitcoin halving, because this is the biggest event right around the freaking corner. The Bitcoin halving is roughly 2 days away, scheduled for the 19th or the 20th. The 19th would be Friday. The 20th would be Sat Stack and Saturday. I think that'd be pretty lit, pun intended, because it would be on 420, a day you'll never forget. But the price action in the month that follows the highly anticipated event has historically been disappointing, says Bitwise Asset Management. In a new post, Bitwise noted the past price action in the month after the halving for the past 3 halvings saw a price drop, so it could be a sell the news event. But in the year that followed is when the price saw a minimum of triple-digit percentage point gains. So keep that in mind. In the month after the 2012 halving, Bitcoin gained 9%. And then over the next year, it surged 8,800%, which is 88x. A similar pattern played out for the 2016 halving. Bitcoin fell 10%. The month after, then gained almost 300% to peak at 20,000 back in 2017. That was, I remember, back in December. And again in 2020, it saw a 6% price gain, very modest, the month post-halving. Then came the 550% pump the following year. So there you go. I mean, do you think history will rhyme? Let me know your thoughts here. Now, the data is limited, but the picture reveals an intriguing pattern. The market prices in the short-term impact of the halving, but underestimates the long-term impact. So short-term, it's saying don't expect much, if anything at all. In fact, we may continue to dump, but it's after that, following the halving, is when we break out, reach new all-time highs, go parabolic, and things get exciting. The current market cycle is the first time the Bitcoin has hit an all-time high before the halving. That's fact. In fact, we recently did that a few weeks ago. It peaked on March 13th, which was last month, at roughly 73,700, which is currently the local high, and since has corrected 16% to roughly 61,000. Industry execs are equally pessimistic for the short term. 10x Research head predicted on April 13th there could be a $5 billion minor sell-off after the halving, putting downwards pressure on the markets. And we also have Marathon CEO Fred Thiel said the halving rally was already factored in, bringing forward what would have been a post-halving rally. Now quoting analyst Rec Capital, he says there were 5 significant pullbacks ranging from 18 to 23%, and currently markets have corrected 16%, suggesting there could be a further drawdown. Meanwhile, fellow analyst Cold-Blooded Schiller, what a username, noted that 30% corrections were not uncommon, hinting the Bitcoin could potentially fall to around 51,000. So let me know your thoughts off the back of that sentiment. Do you think we're likely to correct immediately, like a sell the news event post-halving here in the next few days? Or do you think we'll do something different? Do you think this time is different? Let me know, considering we did breach the previous all-time high pre-halving for the first time in Bitcoin history, which is a good argument. Another argument is this time, this cycle is driven by the institutional FOMO, clearly, with the inflows of the ETFs, and that did not exist previous cycle. The previous all-time high we hit back in November of 2021, that was driven purely from retail. So it is a different time, a different landscape. So I want to know your thoughts and feedback, and I'll read that out loud. Anyways, fam, pump the likes, pump the stream. Now let's dive into some 6-figure targets, followed by $1 million prediction. Let's break this one down first. Macro guru Lynn Alden says Bitcoin hitting 6 figures wouldn't be surprising amid this rising liquidity. Let's break down the timeline. And this is a hilarious photo, by the way, or anime. Anyways, he says conditions are favorable for the king to land on a 100,000 price tag or more. In a new Blockworks macro interview, Alden says Bitcoin is witnessing a supply shock as the majority of long-term Bitcoin hodlers are not yet ready to let go of their stacks at these prices. According to Alden, the constrained Bitcoin supply, coupled with the rise in global liquidity, is proving to be a solid setup for Bitcoin to rally to 6 figures in the coming months. Quoting her here, for Bitcoin, most indicators that I track point to being fairly mid-cycle in terms of the bull run. I still think the next 18 months look favorable for the asset. Again, it tracks global liquidity pretty well. The on-chain indicators can show us, for example, how much long-term hodlers are selling into the current strength. And because even though Bitcoin supply is constrained, if the price goes up 3 or 5x in a fairly short period of time, some of those older coins start to come to the market, start meeting that new demand. We have seen some of that, but so far we have seen less of that in this cycle than in the prior cycles. My expectation is there is room to run both from the liquidity side, being fairly constructive. That should help the demand. And I still think there has to be a higher price to unlock some of these older coins to meet that demand. I would be surprised not to see a 6-figure Bitcoin over the next 18 months. So there you have it. And I would absolutely agree with that sentiment. I personally would be surprised if Bitcoin didn't smash 6 figures this year in 2024. But that's just me. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And to watch this video, she did. Check the show notes below the video in the description. Let's go Bitcoin to the moon. But anyways, we started discussing 6-figure Bitcoin. Here's another 6-figure Bitcoin price prediction from none other than Nick Carter. Let's break this down. Castle Island Ventures founding partner and Coinmetrics co-founder Nick Carter predicts Bitcoin hitting 6 figures this year amid the looming debt crisis. In a new Kitco News interview, Carter says despite the recent pullback, Bitcoin undeniably could reach 100,000 in 2024, quoting him here. On the first day of the year, I think Bitcoin was trading in the 30,000 range, maybe 40,000. I forecasted 80,000 at some point this year. We were very close to hitting that just recently. 100,000 would certainly not be out of the question this year. Let me know if you agree. Now, asked if 100,000 remains its price target for this year, here's what he responded with. Oh yeah, undeniably. And as we look forward to the next 2 or 3 years, I am very, very constructive on the price. I think the Bitcoin thesis has been validated. I think it really got that institutional nod of appeal from the SEC with the ETF approval. We are now seeing other jurisdictions approve ETFs. Hong Kong, I think, is a fast follow there. That's right. And to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, they officially got the approval and the official launch is in 2 weeks out of Hong Kong. And there are 3 different providers. Now, Carter also says reasons to be bullish include the Bitcoin network could advance through emerging layer 2 projects, and the King crypto could act as a safe haven for investors amid rising national debts and high inflation, which is precisely what Bitcoin offers. Now, quoting him again, Bitcoin has really set itself apart from the rest of the crypto economy. There are other positive factors like the emergence of new layer 2 networks on Bitcoin, which are very exciting and allow for it to reach maybe technological parity with Ethereum. So the Bitcoin network itself is sort of being upgraded in real time. And then the fundamental here is there is a debt crisis on the horizon for the developed nations. In particular, the United States, I think, will face monetary repression. We will face yield curve control, high and variable inflation, and people will look for safe havens and other asset classes. Bitcoin has now been ratified as an asset class in its own right, with efficient tools to access it for anybody that wants to in the US. So that fundamental trend is unchanged, regardless of short-term eddies related to the halving. So there you have it. Let me know if you agree or disagree with Nick Carter. And to watch the interview he did with Kitco News entitled Bitcoin Halving, buy now or wait, check the show notes below the video in the description. Now let's dive into our feature story of the day. Bitcoin will reach over $1 million, no doubt, says Animoca founder at the WebSummit Rio, Brazil conference. So let's break this baby down with this prediction. Welcome everyone joining the stream. Pump the likes and pump the stream. Here you go. Yatsu, the founder of Animoca Brands, spoke at WebSummit Rio April 16th on the panel titled Bitcoin's Revenge is Web3 Making a Comeback. I like that title, Bitcoin's Revenge. I may have to use that one of these thumbnail titles, just saying, here on the tube. But anyways, he said that he has no doubt that Bitcoin will reach 1 million per coin. Quoting him here, I do believe that Bitcoin could reach over $1 million plus over time. But I believe not because it's a store of value, but because it will be one of the most important status symbols of the digital economy in the future. Do you hear that, Bored Yacht 8 Club guys out there who are flexing previous cycle with your Bored 8 Yacht Club NFTs? And now they've dumped whatever, 90, 95%. Bitcoin's the new status symbol. I agree with that sentiment. But I also think, obviously, it'll hit 1 million due to being the ultimate store value, right? Because what other asset class can you park your capital in that is unconfiscatable? Oh, that's right. There is none. Bitcoin's your only option. I think for that reason alone, we hit $1 million. And also being the greatest store of value to ever exist, let's not forget it has a finite limited supply, unlike gold, which they can continue digging from the earth, if you know what I mean. But anyways, Ambassador Christina Corner moderated the panel, and at which Ripple President Monica Long appeared alongside Sue, and Long emphasized the development of the crypto market is more important than the price of Bitcoin. Quoting her here, I would say the more important place for us all to focus on is real utility for the assets. And that's what's going to drive long-term value and stability and liquidity for all the assets. In crypto, Long praised Brazil and said the country is one of the places where there is a real focus on crypto development. Quoting them here, Brazil is a place where we are seeing breaking ground for that type of development. You have a government that is creating clear rules around virtual assets and a community of focused developers. And you have a traditional finance bank like Itaú that are a blessing to crypto. So that is a mix of a real focus on crypto. Now, Corner focused on the importance of Web3 for giving power to the people, especially those who do not have so many choices in society. Quoting her here, Web3 is about giving power to the people, to those who didn't have access to certain things. Well said. It does empower the people, agreed. As the panel moved on to Web3, Long highlighted that in contrast to the other markets, there will be more maturity in Web3 companies this year. And equally important, this maturity is reflected in the current institutional adoption. Quoting her again, if you think about it, some of the biggest brands in financial services like Goldman, BlackRock, and Fidelity, they actually build their products and offerings in bear markets, meaning they see the big picture. So I think that's what's going to be very different this year, the institutional embrace. And clearly, that has been a major factor in difference this year thus far. Again, institutions now collectively hold over 900,000 Bitcoin, and it only took them roughly 90 days. Sue stated that financial inclusion and its effects, particularly on blockchain and Web3 games, are more important than the institutional adoption. Quoting them here, we look in places like the Philippines or even in some places in Latin America, millions of the people in the world who don't have a bank, don't have a university education, and in some cases don't even have a high school education, but now though have a crypto wallet. They are included in the new financial system, are becoming somewhat financially literate, taught through gaming, which is another form of play. Good point there. And regarding the spot Bitcoin ETFs, long said, Ripple is working with the banks and payment companies around the world to use blockchain as a layer for a new infrastructure to make global money much more efficient. She noticed a greater interest in the crypto market from banks and has been wondering how to ensure regulated exposure to the market. Quoting her here, as here in Brazil, there's certainly a much stronger liftoff like Hong Kong, and that's another key market. I think one of the interesting things is that we are not done yet with the ETFs. Broadly speaking, meaning Bitcoin ETF is going to emerge in other markets. Now in Hong Kong, then there's Singapore, then there is Tokyo, there is London, there is Europe, and makes a great point. Let's freaking go, if you know what I mean. So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts on this 1 million Bitcoin price prediction. And shout out Francisco. I greatly appreciate you subscribing to the #1 daily Bitcoin pod. I also want to know, by what year do you think Bitcoin realistically taps that 7-figure milestone? Do you think that can happen this year in 2024, as some analysts such as Samson Mao of Jan 3 has been predicting? Do you think it may be this cycle peak, potentially if not this year, the next year, 2025? Or do you think it'll be the next cycle, maybe 2028, 2029, 2030? Holla at your boy and let me know. Personally, I think a 1 million Bitcoin price is most realistically going to happen following cycle, meaning not from 2024 to 2028, but I think between 2028 in 2030. However, I'm still open to the possibility of it happening a lot sooner because I know Bitcoin has no top because fiat currency has no bottom. So hypothetically speaking, what if the US dollar were to hyperinflate over the course of the next couple of years, the cycle? Well, in that scenario, I could absolutely see hyper Bitcoinization, Bitcoin going crazy parabolic sooner than expected. However, if the dollar maintains its dominance as the primary currency of the world and doesn't hyperinflate into infinity, then of course I think it's going to take a little longer. That is a big factor, right? Realistically speaking, hyperinflation can cause Bitcoin to go to $1 billion per coin. That's the synopsis of Jurrien Timmer's prediction, which we have shared here on the show a few times. Jurrien Timmer is the head of macro over at Fidelity, the $4.5 trillion asset manager. And they predicted ultimately, or Jurrien specifically, the head of macro over there, he said Bitcoin will hit $1 billion per coin by 2038. He ultimately saw Bitcoin go into like $1 million by 2030, and then the dollar hyperinflating, and then the value of the US dollar just skyrocket, or not the dollar, but the value of Bitcoin skyrocketing because the dollar losing all of its value. So I want to know your thoughts on that as well. I am obviously very optimistic this halving. I truly believe we're going to have a multiple 6-figure Bitcoin price. And I know this halving is, we're only at 61,000. We're still below. We're still discounted from the previous halving all-time high, which we again saw back, I think it was November 10th of 2021 when we eclipsed roughly 69,000. Bitcoin is pumping right now, this moment. Pump it up, pump the likes, pump the stream. And you already know, 2 days until Bitcoin halving 2024. Exciting times. Obviously, a lot of bullish catalysts in the market. I shared yesterday, we're likely to see a supply shock sometime this year, according to the top analytic platforms. We have a very limited amount of Bitcoin on the exchanges even available at this time. Currently approximately 1.8 million-ish in that ballpark. We've already witnessed a demand shock off the back of the ETFs. Shout out MPC3G. Appreciate the subscription. And yeah, so with the demand shock, we already had, means mass demand in the market. We're also going to have a supply shock. Let's not forget, after the halving, the issuance of the Bitcoin gets cut in half to the miners. We're going to go from 900 Bitcoins being rewarded to the miners per day down to 450. More institutional demand. We already have, again, 900,000 Bitcoins being held by the U.S. institutions out of the 11 which were initially approved and released on January 11th. Now we're going to have the Hong Kong already has 3 issuers. We're going to have the spot not only for Bitcoin, but also Ether, which is the first of its kind. Also, the Bitcoin ETF out of Hong Kong will be the first of its kind because it's not the cash model, but you could actually purchase the ETF with Bitcoin, which makes it different. Then we have all the adoption, which will likely come out of all the other countries, which were mentioned, Malaysia, Singapore. Then you have El Salvador, a lot going on there. Then you have the nation state adoption. Then you have the nation secretly purchasing Bitcoin behind the scenes, potentially Qatar, Abu Dhabi, the UAE, maybe Iran, other countries in the Middle East. Yesterday, I shared a story of Iran could be mining some Bitcoin. We've shared stories of, Russia and the BRICS doing big things, getting into digital assets. I've shared stories of the largest oil company in the world out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, recently partnering with the largest bank in Japan, SBI Holdings, to get into digital assets. We've also discussed Russia opening up a mining hub in Ethiopia. There's just so much bullishness, and there's so limited Bitcoin. You can never print more of it, right? There's so many I think there's 2,500 billionaires on planet Earth. Many of these people are smart. That's the smart money. We would consider these people the whales of society, and they understand Bitcoin at this point. Everyone affluent must understand the value proposition of Bitcoin. The only ones not adopting it are the ones who view it maybe as an enemy. And even the enemies of Bitcoin are stacking. For example, Vanguard, they openly say that Bitcoin, we don't believe in its ethics, like ultimately saying it's a Ponzi, we don't believe in it. But yet at the same time, Vanguard has so much indirect exposure to Bitcoin because it's one of the largest asset managers in the world alongside BlackRock. In fact, this is fact. You can look it up. Vanguard, the Bitcoin hater themselves, they're the largest shareholder of MicroStrategy, the first publicly traded company to put the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They're the number 1 shareholder. The number 2 shareholder is BlackRock. So they all have direct or indirect exposure. I think all nations eventually will have direct or indirect exposure, and the price is going to go crazy. It has to. When you have a limited supply and massive demand, numbers go up. Hence, we coin Bitcoin, number go up. Technology, right? And Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom, and there's a guarantee I can make. Though I can't guarantee a specific price prediction by a particular date, I can literally guarantee you that the purchasing power of the dollar is mathematically guaranteed to decrease as they continue to print money. And we know they're going to continue to print money because we know they're in a $35 trillion deficit. So it's the only option. Now, on the back of that, the other side of that coin, pun intended, is Bitcoin is mathematically guaranteed to increase its purchasing power, just as it has been doing flawlessly over the past 15 years. For example, there was a time it would have cost thousands of Bitcoin to buy your dream house, or for example, your average house. Now, for a couple of Bitcoin, you can purchase a house, right? $120,000 house. Boom. There will be a time for 0.2 Bitcoin, you can purchase, $120,000 house. And there will be a time where you can purchase $1 million house for, 0.2 Bitcoin. And then eventually 0.1 Bitcoin, meaning the purchasing power is going to continue. And if you look at the charts on that, you look at the chart of Bitcoin versus the dollar since the inception of Bitcoin, that's the tail of the tape. That's all we need to know, right? So TA is great. We cover it every episode. It's entertaining. It's fun checking out the price action, where it's going to go next. But the bigger picture, supply, demand, stock to flow, limited supply, massive demand, incorruptible money, perfect money, pristine collateral, not only incorruptible, but also unconfiscatable. These are properties no other asset class have, which separate it from everything else. Also, it's the future. Is digital. Digital is the future. There's too many drawdowns and negatives to holding gold. Even the largest gold bug advocate in the world, Peter Schiff, don't even hold gold. So he doesn't even practice what he preaches. That'd be like somebody preaching. That'd be like Michael Saylor telling you to buy Bitcoin and not owning. Michael Saylor not owning any. That would be considered a hypocrite, would it not? Here's one thing I know as well. According to Michael Saylor, at least, and I have a lot of respect for the guy, of course. He's a smart man, and that's why we call him the Giga Chad. But he says, those who save in fiat currency, we have a name for those folks. What do we call them?
But like most of the people who are buying assets at some point want to sell the assets at a profit.
Let me know if you agree with this sentiment.
People that use fiat.
What do we call them, folks? Bitwood Studios? I kind of like that one. It sounds cool. Bitwood Studios. I dig it.
Currency as a store of value.
Yep, drop it in the chat. What do we call them, folks?
We call them poor. We call them poor. People that use fiat currency
As a store of value, we call them, you already know.